walking and must be nearing the gate, which was locked, though Stowe would have picked it open. Rumour had it he'd joined Truggery after a life of shop-breaking was brought to a summary end by a narrow escape from the law. However that was, he turned instead to breaking graves for bodies to sell over to the hospital up Dorchester way. But this client was no prentice surgeon to be wanting bones instead of flesh. The coach had come to a standstill. A whiffle of horse breath and soft shifting of hooves whispered across the graves. There came the sound of feet hitting the ground, the click of a door latch and a curt voice speaking low. Perkin could not make out the words, but he trained his gaze in that direction as the gate creaked and quick footsteps followed the path. In moments a tall figure joined Truggery on the edge of the grave. It was swathed in a long cloak, its head mostly concealed by a three-cornered hat. "You have one ready?" The voice was cultured, with an odd edge to it that caused a shiver to rise up the boy's spine.
"Ready as it can be, though it won't be nothing but dust and bones, this'n."
"It makes no matter. Bring the coffin out."
"Bring it out?"
Truggery again, both surprised and aggrieved.
"We don't never bring 'em out, mister. We brings out the bodies. Them coffins is half rotten."
The gentleman's tone sharpened, the dangerous edge pronounced. "I require the coffin. Bring it out." Truggery grunted his dissatisfaction and dropped back into the grave. A low-voiced argument ensued, with Stowe evidently protesting. Perkin kept his eyes trained on the still figure above, a hawkish silhouette under the faint light of the moon. Shivering a little, Perkin dipped lower, unaccountably chilled. An owl called. The man's head jerked up just as the clouds parted, throwing a stray moonbeam onto a dark patch where the upper part of his face should have been, giving him an even more sinister aspect. Perkin's pulse fluttered crazily, and a fervent wish to be elsewhere attacked him. The activity within the grave had grown noisy and fierce. Grunts and cursing from both men, accompanied by scrapes, bumps, and heavy breathing. A long shape emerged, Truggery behind it. Had they upended the coffin? The big man shoved himself up from the hole and perched on the edge, grabbing hold of his end. The still figure shifted at last, moving out of the way as Truggery, with Stowe presumably shoving from beneath, manoeuvred the coffin out of the grave until the box lay along the path, the resurrection men panting beside it. "Open it." Truggery did not trouble to argue the matter this time. Perkin could tell he was angry by the way he got up, marched to the headstone, and retrieved from behind it the cloth bag usually slung about his shoulder. Shoving a hand inside, he produced a short crowbar Perkin had seen before and handed it to Stowe, who fell to the task of prizing off the coffin lid. Since this was usually done down in the hole, Perkin watched the procedure, intrigued. Stowe's expertise made the job look easy as he slid the blade in, knocked it hard, and moved along to do the same all around. Or, as this was an old one, perhaps the wood was rotting as Truggery said and easier to part. However it was, the lid came off without difficulty, and the two men lifted it away, peering at the remains of the unfortunate within.
"Bones and rags, mister, like I said,"
Truggery told his client on a note of dour satisfaction.
"Empty it. Tip them into the grave."
Perkin almost gasped aloud. He clapped a hand to his mouth, unsurprised to see how both Truggery and Stowe turned to stare at the man.
"You don't want this here skeleton?"
"I want the coffin. I told you."
"The coffin?"
A squeak from Stowe.
"But you could have got a coffin off the undertaker, without no need of us going a-digging of it up out of the ground."
The gentleman did not trouble to respond to this, merely repeating his command in a sharper tone.
"Empty it. I want it empty and set back there at the side of the grave."
Stowe's head turned back to his partner. Truggery shrugged and went to one end of the coffin.
"Take t'other end."
The two picked up the long box, carried it with some effort to the side unencumbered by the mound of freshly dug earth, and tipped it up sideways. The slither and clatter of the falling corpse made the boy feel quite sick. He dared not move a muscle, however, fearful of discovery while this man with his peculiar desire for an aged, empty coffin was still present. Perkins hoped he would